Welcome to TV Africa News. Thank you so much for joining us and always being part of us. This is Africa Today. My name is Nahaba Kajura, but first are the headlines. Uganda's ambassador to Kenya dies in Nairobi hospital. Professor George Kanyehamba accuses court of conniving with the ruling government. U.S. ambassador to Sudan urges holdout groups to join talks. In our sports news today, Uganda Cranes start CHAN 2023 expedition with goalless draw against the Democratic Republic of Congo. Once again, thank you so much for joining us and always being part of us. We start with one of our top stories. Dr. Hassan Mwaswa Galiwango, Uganda's ambassador to Kenya and Seychelles, has died according to reports in Nairobi. Galiwango passed on in Nairobi, Kenya, where he was admitted recently. Our reporter has more on this report.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has confirmed the death of Ambassador Galiwango, adding that burial arrangements will be communicated in due course. Dr. Galiwango was appointed to the position in June 2021. He has been serving as ambassador to Seychelles as well as Uganda's parliament representative to the United Nations Environment Programme and UN Habitat. Dr. Galiwango was also the former long-serving Director of Finance and Administration at the NRM Secretariat at the time of his ambassadorial appointment. Ms. Medina Naham, the NRM party chairperson of Koboko District, replaced him at the Secretariat. The late was the husband to Mbale City Woman Member of Parliament, Honorable Koni Nakayeze Galiwango. Eulogizing the deceased, Vision Group CEO Don Wanyama, who hails from the same area as the late Galiwango, said the region is weaker with a key pillar bent.
Thank you so much, reporter. Moving on in our top stories, retired Supreme Court Judge Professor George Kanyehamba has condemned the judiciary for being corrupt and failing to exercise justice. Now, this was after a constitutional court dismissed his petition challenging President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni and the National Resistance Movement MOVE to scrap bail for capital offenders. We have more.
In their judgment, the 5 constitutional judges led by Justice Ngonda Ntende have concurred that the petition was filed in a wrong court, contending that the redress may only be sought from this court if it flows directly from a cause of action under Article 137, Section 4 of the Constitution. Upon dismissal, the professor turned furious, directing all the blame to the registrar of the court, Suzanne Buchana, who read the judgment saying she is a corrupt fellow who works together with Sudhir Pareria and the NRM government to bring him down. He further revealed that Justice Ntende is uneducated, civilized, and a friend who can't participate in such a judgment, containing that the judgment was written by the registrar who hates him to the bone. Kanyehamba sued President Museveni, Attorney General, and the NRM party, saying that they wanted to change the law so that everybody is guilty until you prove that you are innocent. Yet the law says everyone is presumed innocent until proven guilty.
Moving on in top stories, President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni has demanded for the ban of travels by members of parliament abroad, saying there is need to invest all the needed funds in the Uganda Petroleum Institution, Chigumba. The president made the remarks as he commissioned the state of facilities built at the Institute of Chiyandongo District. We have more on this report.
According to President Yoweri Museveni, the investment of more funds into the Uganda Petroleum Institute Chigumba will prepare Ugandans with the needed skills and strengthen the country's capacity in the oil sector. The president went on to describe the institute as one of the lucrative projects that is bound to generate billions of dollars for the country in a few years to come, and saying investing in such an institute is very critical. Museveni, on the other hand, praised the World Bank for its assistance in raising the institute's facilities and standards, hence accusing government planners for failing to give financing priority to the institution given its importance. Located in Chiyandongo District, Uganda Petroleum Institute Chigumba was established in 2010, a few years after Uganda discovered oil resources in Bunyoro sub-region. The government-owned institution is the country's center for training, research and consultancy in the field of petroleum exploration, recovery, refinement and responsible utilization of oil and gas resources.
Thank you so much, reporter. Africa Today takes a quick break. We shall come back with the international news. Welcome back from the break. You're still watching TV Africa, the Brighton. In international news, the U.S. ambassador to Sudan has urged former rebel groups who did not take part in the post-coup political deal to join talks seeking to restore civilian rule.
Last month, military leaders and some civilian factions agreed on the first of a two-phase political process aiming to end the political turmoil that resulted from a military coup led by Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. According to U.S. Ambassador to Sudan, John Godfrey, there are groups that have remained outside the framework political agreement so far and thinks that it's important to note that the process remains open for them to come in. The 2021 military coup triggered near-weekly demonstrations, with activists demanding a civilian government. More than 120 people have been killed in the crackdown on the anti-coup demonstrations, according to pro-democracy medics. The coup has also deepened a spiraling economic crisis and heightened ethnic clashes in Sudan's remote regions, which killed around 900 people last year, according to the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. Another round of talks is expected in the coming weeks over key contentious issues, including transitional justice, accountability, and security reforms.
Moving on, in international news, the Tanzanian opposition leader and former presidential candidate Tundu Lissu says he plans to return home this month from exile in Europe after the government lifted a ban on political rallies.
Lissu, a former politician, left the country for treatment abroad after he was shot 16 times by the unknown gunman in September 2017. He returned for a new month in 2020 to challenge Magufuli in a presidential election and took 13% of the votes, but his Chadema party rejected the outcome over claims of widespread irregularities. The ban imposed by former President John Magufuli in 2016 allowed only elected politicians to conduct rallies in their constituencies. President Samia Suluhu Hassan lifted the 6.5-year ban on political rallies last week as part of her reconciliation strategy after taking over the presidency in March 2021 following the death of Magufuli. President Hassan has also lifted a ban on 4 newspapers.
Away from that, thousands of soldiers and supporters of the Polisario Front, the Western Sahara's pro-independence movement, met on Thursday at the Dakhla refugee camp in the Tindouf region of Algeria to hold the start of the party conference.
The gathering will seek to discuss party policy and strategy in its struggle against Morocco, which has controlled most of Western Sahara since moving in 1975 after the withdrawal of Spanish colonialists. The Polisario movement's 16th Congress will also see a leadership election and runs until 17th January. The UN Secretary Council has called for a revival of negotiations on the disputed territory and has expressed deep concern at the breakdown of the 1991 ceasefire between Morocco and Polisario. The UN brokered 1991 ceasefire led to a peacekeeping mission that was also to help prepare a referendum on the territory's future. The referendum has never taken place because of disagreements on who is eligible to vote. Morocco has proposed wide-ranging autonomy for Western Sahara, but the Polisario Front insists the local population, which it estimates at 350,000 to 500,000, has a right to referendum.
Away from that, 2 of the 3 elephants of Ivorian politics are in their 80s, while one is in its 70s, something that Jean-Louis Bellion, former Ivory Coast Trade Minister, is now campaigning against.
Jean-Louis Bellion on Saturday called for the return of the age limit of 75 years for presidential candidates during his appearance on a radio program. He is targeting the dinosaurs of Ivorian politics, Alassane Ouattara, Laurent Gbagbo, but also the president of his own party, Henry Konan, although none of the three men has officially applied for the election so far. The former trade minister's position resonates with the recent decision of the PDCI's political bureau to designate Bedi, the 88-year-old former president, as the sole candidate to lead the party. This decision created a stir internally, with some seeing it as a future designation of Henry Konan as a presidential candidate. On Saturday, Bellion also announced his intention to be a candidate in Ivory Coast's presidential election in 2025. Although the election is 2 years away, permutations are already being made as to whom will succeed Alassane Ouattara.
Thank you so much, reporter. We'll take a quick break. We shall come back with business, health, and sports. Welcome back from the break. You're still watching TV Africa, the right to know. In the business news today, China's chief diplomat was in Cairo on Sunday for talks with Egyptian and Arab League officials, marking his last stop in a multi-leg trip to Africa that aims to consolidate Beijing's footprint across the resource-rich continent. Now, Chinese Foreign Minister Gang met with the Egyptian counterpart, Sam Shukri.
In a joint news conference, Shukri said that talks addressed Sino-Egyptian relations and increasing Chinese tourism to the Middle Eastern country, which has for years struggled to revive its vital tourism sector. Both ministers say that they discussed regional issues, including the Israel-Palestinian conflict. Tensions have risen after the return to office last month of Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who is heading Israel's most right-wing and religiously conservative government. He also called for maintaining the status quo at Jerusalem's most important holy site after an ultra-nationalist Israel cabinet minister visited it earlier this year. That visit drew fierce condemnation from across the Muslim world and a strong rebuke from the United States. In his meeting with El-Sisi, the Chinese foreign minister said Beijing would continue to develop its investment in Egypt's infrastructure projects, including those with links to China's Belt and Road Initiative.
In a health news today, the cholera outbreak in Malawi, the worst in 2 decades, has reached the grim mark of 750 deaths and continue to rise across the country despite some encouraging signs in some areas. This was announced by the country's health minister over the weekend.
According to Malawi Health Minister Kandodo Chiponda, they continue to record rising number of cases across the country despite signs of reduced transmission and deaths in a few areas. The cholera outbreak was declared in March last year. So far, the authorities recorded almost 23,000 cases. The minister added that they received 2.9 million dosages of the cholera vaccine, but as they have about 40,000 left, which means the Malawians availed themselves for the vaccine. He said that what is worrying, however, is that those that receive the vaccine are not the ones at high risk, because those are in high risk are proving difficult to convince to take the vaccine. According to Africa CDC, the continent's largest public health body, 14 African countries are reporting cholera cases, many of which are due to flooding across the continent.
In our sports news today, Uganda Cranes began their journey at this year's African Nations Championship with a goalless draw against Democratic Republic of Congo in the game played on Saturday at Stadium 19th May 1956 in Annaba, Algeria. It is at this particular time that I thank you for being part of us and always joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We shall keep updating you. It is TV Africa, the right to know.